They say the worst betrayal comes from within the family, but no one ever warns you what it feels like when the knife is twisted in slow motion. I had spent my whole life sacrificing for my only daughter, Laura. Even when I was diagnosed with late-stage osteoarthritis and had to rely on a wheelchair, I never imagined the deepest wound I'd feel wouldn't be in my bones, but in my heart. My name is Miriam. I'm 67 years old. I used to be a teacher, full of energy, full of discipline, but age has taken its toll. My legs barely function now. After my diagnosis, Laura insisted I move into her home, saying, "Mom, this is your home too." I believed her. I believed I would be safe, but what I found instead was something rotten. It started small. A lingering glance, a laugh that lasted a little too long. The nanny Sasha was in her 20s, pretty a little too comfortable in her short skirts and flirty voice. She'd been hired just months before I moved in to help take care of my grandson Ben. Laura trusted her. Too much, I think. My son-in-law Matt always smiled a little too wide when Sasha entered the room. I brushed it off at first. Maybe I was just an old woman growing suspicious in her limitations. But then I started hearing whispers. Late at night, when I was supposed to be asleep in the guest room downstairs, I heard footsteps on the stairs, giggles, a hushed voice saying just 5 minutes. Then silence. The next morning, Laura looked tired, exhausted from work, and trying to balance her life. Matt, however, looked like a man well-rested and smug. One morning, as Sasha served breakfast and brushed a crumb from Matt's shirt, I saw the way he looked at her. The kind of look a man gives when he's forgotten who he's supposed to love. I said nothing. But inside me something shifted. You can't be a mother and not feel the air turn cold when your child is in danger. I wasn't going to confront them, not yet. I didn't have proof, and I knew how this could turn against me. "Mom, you're old. You're sick. You're imagining things." No, I'd been around too long to be gaslit by a boy in a collared shirt and a nanny who smelled like perfume and guilt. So I waited. I started keeping a notebook, writing down every time Sasha stayed late, every time Matt came home early, every whisper I caught under their breath. I may not walk much anymore, but my ears are sharp. My mind is sharper. And if they thought I was just a harmless old woman in a wheelchair, they were dead wrong. I started by planting seeds, harmless questions asked with a fragile voice. "Sasha, were you here late last night? I thought I heard footsteps." She smiled sweetly. "Oh no, Mrs. Miriam. Maybe it was Ben getting up." Matt chimed in from the kitchen, not even looking up from his phone. "You must have dreamt it." I didn't dream it. My illness makes me slow, but not stupid. I installed a simple voice recorder under the couch cushion. It picked up hours of mundane chatter, cartoons, baby giggles. And then one night, after Laura had gone to her sister's for a weekend trip, I heard it. "I miss your bed," Sasha giggled. "You'll get it again soon." "Just play it cool," Matt whispered. A kiss. Then footsteps. Then silence. I replayed it over and over. My hands shook not from arthritis this time, but rage. I wanted to scream at them, confront them right then, but I knew that wouldn't fix anything. Laura had given this man 7 years of her life. A child, a home, a future. And this is how he repaid her. No, I needed more. I searched their rooms when they weren't home. I was slow but deliberate. In Matt's office drawer beneath bills and old receipts, I found a burner phone, not password protected, and filled with photos of Sasha. Some of them indecent. Others were selfies of them together. Hotel rooms, parked cars. And then there were the messages. "She's so clueless, babe. Soon I'll convince her to get full-time help. You can move in officially. I can't wait for this to be our house." Our house. The gall. I took pictures of the texts with my own phone, sent them to a secret email I created. Evidence. Still, I needed something irrefutable, something that couldn't be explained away. I remembered the upstairs guest room, the one they never used, the one Matt kept locked because it's just for storage. But I'd seen Sasha go in there once when she thought no one was watching. I asked the housekeeper if she knew where the key was. She smiled innocently and said, "Oh, Mr. Matt keeps a spare behind the laundry detergent." That night, while the house slept, I rolled myself into the laundry room, reached up with my grabber tool, and found the key. Inside that room was a Second Life candles, lingerie, wine bottles, even a love letter with Matt's initials and a childish lipstick kiss. I left everything untouched. But my plan, it was just beginning. I stared at that room for a long time. It reeked of betrayal, cheap perfume-stained sheets, and the illusion of secrecy. They thought no one would find out. that my daughter would remain the dutiful, oblivious wife while they played house in her own home. But I wasn't about to let that happen. The next morning, I locked the guest room back, placed the key exactly where it was, and sat down with my tea. Sasha came in like usual, humming like a little bird. Matt walked in 10 minutes later, kissed his son on the head, and winked at her when he thought I wasn't looking. That wink sealed it. I called my old friend Harold, a retired electrician, and asked him to stop by discreetly. I told him I needed help fixing a flickering light. What I really needed was his help installing a couple of hidden mini cameras, one in the hallway, one in the living room, and the third right in the air vent of the guest room upstairs. "Are you sure about this?" Harold asked, glancing toward the baby's toys in the corner. "I've never been more sure in my life," I replied. "I need proof they can't deny." With everything in place, I had to get Laura out of the house. I waited for the right moment. A few days later, she mentioned her company had an upcoming seminar in another city, but she wasn't sure she could leave me and Ben. That was my opportunity. "You should go," I told her gently. "You haven't had time for your career in months. Let me take care of Ben for a few days. Sasha's here anyway, right?" Laura looked torn, but I insisted. I even made it sound like I wanted to bond more with my grandson, partly true. But mostly, I needed her gone. I watched her pack her bags, kiss Matt goodbye, and drive off to the airport with a trusting smile. My daughter had no idea that by the time she returned, the man she thought she loved would be exposed in the worst way possible. The night Laura left, I pretended to go to bed early. Matt opened a bottle of wine at 9:30. Sasha came downstairs wearing something barely wearable. They whispered, giggled, and then disappeared into the guest room. I sat alone in the dark, a blanket on my lap, the baby monitor in one hand and the live camera feed on my phone in the other. There they were, on the bed, laughing, kissing, undressing. I didn't feel disgusted. I didn't even feel shocked. I felt focused. They had just hung themselves. All I had to do now was tighten the noose. I spent the next morning sipping tea while Matt stumbled downstairs and last night's shirt hair still tousled. Sasha didn't come down until an hour later, feigning a stretch and a yawn. I smiled sweetly at them both. "Oh, you two must have been up late watching movies," I said, voice light as honey. Matt froze for just a second, then chuckled. "Yeah, something like that." They had no idea I'd recorded it all, from the undressing to the things they whispered between the sheets. I now held the keys to their destruction. I made 2 copies of the footage, one on a USB, one stored in a secure cloud folder. I wasn't going to risk losing this. That afternoon I called Laura and told her everything was fine. Ben's an angel, and Matt and Sasha have been very helpful, I said, barely hiding the venom in my throat. That night I baited the trap. I told Matt that Sasha should stay the night again, as I'd been feeling extra tired and wanted her help with Ben's bath and bedtime. "Oh, are you okay?" he asked, glancing at me with mock concern. I nodded slowly. "Just weak. My legs ache. I might sleep early." I rolled myself into my room and dimmed the lights, but I didn't sleep. I waited, listening. At around 10:15, I heard the telltale creak of the guest room door, then the sound of whispered laughter. It was time. I texted Laura, "I need you home. Emergency, do not tell Matt." She called immediately, panicked. "Is Ben okay?" "He's fine," I whispered. "Just come home quietly." To her credit, she didn't ask more. She was on the road in 15 minutes. When she arrived, I met her at the door. She looked scared. I took her hand, rolled her into the living room, and handed her my phone. "What is this?" she asked. "Just watch." She pressed play and saw her husband of 7 years kissing the nanny in their bed, saw his hands on her, heard them giggling, mocking Laura's absence. She dropped the phone. Her hands trembled, her eyes filled. "No," she gasped. "No, this can't be." But it was. Her knees buckled. I caught her hand and gripped it tight. "I'm sorry, I had to show you." For a moment she sat frozen in pain. Then something inside her snapped. She stood, walked upstairs fast. I followed as far as I could, stopping near the landing. Then I heard it. The guest room door flung open. A scream, a slap, then crashing glass. And Sasha's voice. "She set us up, that old witch." Laura came storming down alone, tears streaming, mascara, smeared fists clenched. "She's packing. He's next." My daughter had finally seen the truth, and I had finally set her free. The silence after that storm was the kind that rang in your ears. Laura collapsed onto the couch, her chest heaving with emotion. Her face had twisted into something between heartbreak and fury. I wheeled over gently, taking her hand. "You didn't deserve this," I said. She shook her head, silent tears streaming. Upstairs I heard rustling, angry footsteps, drawers opening and slamming shut. Then Matt's voice, frantic. "Laura, wait, please, we can talk about this." She didn't move. A moment later, Sasha came barreling down the stairs, dragging a small suitcase. Her hair was messy, her eyes wild. "She tricked us," she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. "That old hag set us up." "I did," I said calmly, "and I'd do it again." Laura stood. "Get out," she said, voice low, trembling, dangerous. Sasha scoffed and looked at Matt for support. He was halfway down the stairs, shirt halfway buttoned. "You're going to believe her," he barked. "Your mother's sick, Laura." "Delusional. She's trying to tear us apart." I didn't flinch. I pulled out the USB stick and held it up. "You're right, Matt. I am sick, but I'm not stupid. And I recorded everything." His face drained of color. "Destroy it," he said, voice suddenly soft pleading. "Please, Miriam, we can fix this." Laura turned to him, her voice shaking. "You let her into our bed. You made a fool of me, of our family. You think this is something we can fix?" She pointed to the door. "Out, both of you." Matt took a step forward. "This is my house, too." "No," I said, smiling coldly. "This was your house. You forgot that when you decided to bring a stranger into your wife's bed. You disrespected her. You disrespected your son. You disrespected me." Matt's jaw tightened. "You think you've won, old woman? You ruined my life." I met his eyes unblinking. "No, Matt. You ruined your life. I just made sure the truth came out." Sasha grabbed Matt's arm and yanked him toward the door. He paused, looked back once, as if hoping Laura would crumble and beg him to stay. She didn't. When the door slammed shut, Laura finally broke down. Not in rage, but in quiet, gut-wrenching sobs. I wrapped my arms around her as tightly as my frail body would allow. "I should have seen it," she whispered. "How did you know?" "Because I've lived longer," I said, "and I know what betrayal smells like. It reeks. But so does justice." We sat in silence for a long time after that. No words, just the sound of a home beginning to breathe again, finally free of poison. The days that followed were a blur of lawyers' apologies and painful explanations. Laura filed for divorce immediately. There was no hesitation in her voice anymore, no second-guessing, no sleepless nights spent wondering what she did wrong. "I did nothing wrong," she said firmly, as she packed the last of Matt's belongings into a cardboard box and taped it shut. "And I won't let Ben grow up thinking this kind of love is normal." She was changing, rising from the ashes of betrayal with a spine made of steel. Matt tried to reach out, of course, first with tears, then threats. I told Laura to ignore it. I'd already forwarded the recordings and messages to her lawyer. Let him try something. He wouldn't win. As for Sasha, she disappeared, probably ran off to avoid the legal consequences of an inappropriate relationship in the home of her employer. The agency we'd hired her through said she'd vanished without a trace. Fitting, really. Trash often takes itself out when exposed to light. One quiet morning, Laura sat with me in the garden. Ben played near the roses, his tiny giggles floating through the breeze. Laura turned to me, her eyes softer now, less haunted. "You knew this would destroy me, Mom, but you still showed me. Why?" I looked at her, taking her hand in mine. "Because staying in the dark would have destroyed you slower. And worse. I'd rather you hurt now than rot forever in a lie." She nodded. Tears welled up again, but this time they were different. Grateful. "He fooled me," she whispered, "but he never fooled you." "No," I said. "He underestimated the woman who raised you. I'd thought being disabled made me powerless, that my illness would make me invisible, but it had given me something far greater time. Time to listen, time to observe, and time to plan. Justice doesn't always come from the strong. Sometimes it comes from a quiet chair in the corner. From a woman who knows that silence is a weapon and patience is a trap." Ben ran over and hugged his mother. She smiled and lifted him into her lap. Laura was healing, and I was still here, frail, aching, but alive. We had lost a man, but we had reclaimed our peace. And for the first time in years, I looked at this family, what was left of it, and felt whole again. Because love isn't about pretending things are perfect. It's about choosing truth no matter how much it hurts. And I had chosen it for her. If you've made it this far, maybe you're someone like me, someone older, someone tired, someone who's been told to stay out of it more times than you can count. But let me tell you something, silence can be just as cruel as betrayal. I didn't expose my son-in-law to be petty. I did it because truth matters, especially to the people we love. My body is weak now, but I've never felt stronger, because I used my last ounces of energy not to protect myself, but to protect my daughter and grandson from a life built on lies. So if you see something that feels wrong, trust your instincts. Don't dismiss your pain, and don't let anyone tell you you're too old, too sick, or too late to make a difference. Sometimes justice doesn't arrive in the courtroom. Sometimes it rolls in quietly in a wheelchair, and it knows exactly what it's doing.